Hello, this is Simon Brew. I'm the editor of Film Stories magazine, and a very warm welcome to a special episode of the Film Stories podcast.
Come with me.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And movies that had stories.
That the story just sucks them in.
This is just the beginning.
Stories. We would be honored if you would join us.
Hello and a very warm welcome to Film Stories with Simon Brew. I am Simon Brew. As always, that's absolutely everything you need to know about me. The aim of the podcast, well, title gives it away. I'm here to talk of the stories of film, and I tend to talk about development stories, marketing stories, release stories, production stories, all the bits and bobs really that go to make the films that we know and sometimes love. Just that, the films that we know and sometimes love. What you've happened upon here, though, is one of my occasional special episodes of the podcast where I bring in a filmmaker and we talk about making films and their body of work and the stories of their movies. And I'm delighted for this episode to be joined by British writer and director Johannes Roberts, who, at the point this podcast has been released, is, he's behind the new Resident Evil reboot movie, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, that's opening in UK cinemas on the 3rd of December 2021. This conversation inevitably takes in Resident Evil. Had a lot of fun talking about that, but we also go right the way back through Johannes's career, and I find this a really interesting story because he's very, very candid, as you're about to hear, about the lows of his career as much as he is the highs of them. A few bits and bobs worth noting just in advance. He talks at one point about Mila, that is Mila Jovovich, who was the star of the first run of Resident Evil movies that were primarily directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. We mentioned a couple of other movies along the way as well. We mentioned the film F, which is, if you hear an F, it is the full name of a film, which was, as Johannes tells us in the interview, really his breakthrough movie after making quite a lot of films that hadn't really broken through at all. We then also touch on the film Storage 24 as well, which was released in the UK by Universal Pictures. There is a moment where, and again, he's candid about this, where Johannes's daughter is in the background. That is all entirely proper. I've not been editing sound effects in just to add a little bit of atmosphere to a Resident Evil production. Nonetheless, with all that in mind, I think that's all you need to know going in, really. This is, as I say, it's a long, candid chat, and I really hope you enjoy it as much as I did. I'm going to tee it up with a clip from the trailer for Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, and then you'll hear my interview with Johannes after this.
Every story has a beginning. Discover the origin of evil.
Why are you back here, Claire? Your conspiracies weren't true when we were kids. They're not true now.
We need to expose Umbrella. Watch this.
I'm afraid, Claire. I'm afraid of what they're gonna do to this town. You see, Umbrella, they had an incident. I'm talking Chernobyl, if you know what I mean. People are getting sick. You gotta help us, Claire. Let the world know what's really going on.
So that was a clip from Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. There is a colon, isn't there? I think there's a colon.
Yes, there is, yes.
Yes, okay, let's go with colon. And I'm delighted to be joined by its writer and director, and I think I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Johannes Roberts. Is that right?
Yeah, Johannes Roberts. The J is pronounced a Y.
Okay.
But now I'm storming off. God damn it. I told them to get this right. I'm out of here.
You're the second person to do that to me this week. You are the only person I've ever had on this podcast who I shared a taxi with. The one time that we crossed, and it struck me as I was back in another life. I was doing Den of Geek, and you came along and you did you performed a live story. This was back in 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
And you had to rush off somewhere, and I was going off in the same direction. But my point was, I mean, it's quite interesting to see how our lives have divested there, and I wonder who's won, really. So I'm kind of sat in a pokey little room in the West Midlands, and you're an international film director, having just taken on a major studio franchise. Who's won?
Well, I'm sitting in a pokey little room in East London at the moment, actually. So we're equally battling.
Okay, I think you might prevail. One of the things that's always interested me about your story, and you were candid about this with interviews you were doing right the way back when F was released, for instance, that even when you got to F, which was what, released 2010, you described yourself back then as a working horror director who'd been battling for a decade just to get to the point of getting a proper cinema release for one of his films. I wonder, can you take me back into that decade? Because the contrast of where you were then to where you are now is incredible, really. But I just wonder, for those listening who are on, just starting up the ladder, what was 2000 to 2010 for you?
Bleak. Living at home with my mum is what it was. It's funny. What's funny about it is how interconnected with the Resident Evil franchise it was, because we did.
Oh, you're a pro.
That's great. Isn't it good? Isn't it good?
At that.
But no, seriously, like when I did my first movie, I left university. It was a film course. There wasn't really even a proper film course. I was the only place I could get accepted to.
Yeah.
And I left uni and, was never going to get a job in the industry. No one would have taken me for anything. I was never the person at a university where people said, oh, he's going to be, going anywhere or doing anything. I was always, just doing slightly weird and wonderful horror stuff. And with a friend, we wrote a script and just together put some money on a credit card and said, we're going to call ourselves filmmakers. And we made this movie called Sanitarium, which is horrible, but you can still watch it. It's all shot on film, and I had no idea what I was doing, like literally none. And just made this movie. And we took it out to Cannes, because I don't know why we decided to go to Cannes, but we went there. We took we went on a bus to Cannes and took a bag full of trailers on VHS to show people. And we went around the marketplace and went to all the sales agents and everybody handed out, and everybody was like, this is terrible, go away, please. And I remembered on that year, and that was a bleak year, that first year in Cannes. But I remember walking down the pier at one point, and there was a party going, and there's this girl in a red dress, and it was Mila going to, and I didn't know about that world, or I obviously knew about the Resident Evil franchise, but didn't know that thing. So it's a very funny. I just remember it so strikingly, and obviously that franchise was just kicking off as I was doing Sanitarium, and one was more successful than the other. But it was tough. The 10 years were brutal, in that I just sort of made these low budget DVD things and found a world. That first movie sold, and it got released on DVD, and then I just sort of hustled around making this kind of movies for like 10-20 grand that kind of sold on DVD, but I never got anywhere near a screen bigger than your TV. And it got to a stage then where that kind of ran out, and I got no respect in the British industry. None for even just being a guy. My first movie, I was like 22, I think, when I made it. There was no respect to say, oh, well done for at least going there and actually not just talking about being a film director, but just going and making a film director. It was just kind of like, you're not a proper guy.
Which is ironically what all the courses tell you to do, isn't it? Just go and make something.
Yeah. And it would, it was pretty bleak times, because, the movies were not good at all, but I was just learning how to very openly, very visually to people, because these movies were selling and they were going around the world. I was learning my craft, not doing short movies or commercials or anything. I was doing these films that were getting viewed, but obviously nobody really liked them. But it really, those 10 years were awful. Like I say, I had to move back with my mum. It was pretty embarrassing times, like people would ask you what you're doing. I'd say, like, I'm a film director, and they look at you and they go, yeah, what do you really do though? Because you live at home with your mum. When are you going to get there?
And was that the day job as well? Were you doing other things to pay the
Not
bills?
really. I mean, I would, occasionally I would do like a guest lecture. And actually, oddly, like that became quite fun, and that really invigorated my love of what I do, in that actually the students were interested, because I wasn't a successful filmmaker, but I was making stuff that was getting out there and was being released around the world and was on DVD everywhere and was hustling and doing my own thing. And they could connect to that in a way that possibly that they couldn't connect to like a big filmmaker. And so I would do quite a lot of that.
I mean, my son's just done a round of open days at universities, and he's stood in front of lecturers who just says, I've directed lots of stuff, but you won't have seen my stuff because it's commercials.
Yeah.
And you're just like, so I can't tell you what I've directed. So I get like the appeal of seeing someone who's done something tangible, whether you like it or not, in front of you.
Yeah. And I could pass them round the copies of the DVDs, and they would have fun with it.
You still have the VHSs in the bag.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I come out with a little bag. Everybody would have. But it was I mean, it was pretty brutal.
I mean, can I ask what importance? Because horror, I mean, from the outside looking in, I'm told from an assortment of horror directors that horror is a more welcoming world to go into and learn your craft than other genre, just by nature that the film festivals seem to be a little bit warmer and there's a little bit more of a community amongst filmmaking. Did you get that at all? Because I remember Forest of the Dam got to Fright Fest, didn't it? I just wonder what difference that kind of thing made.
No, it didn't. And in fact, I was very much shunned, I think, by the horror community as well. Dear. So I was shunned by everybody. My movies never really played the festivals. I think the difference that of my perspective, that is that my outlook and the way I went about things, that I think it's kind of served me well in the long run, but it has been tough because I wasn't really welcomed in the horror community. I don't think I was unwelcomed, but I was always a bit of a hack, and people would just like I didn't get invited. I did finally Fright Fest in 2010 with F, but that was the first time I got into any festival. My outlook was always about, to me, a movie was all about finding an audience and selling. It was a business, not making money, but like the whole, like I felt like if it didn't sell and sell around the world, and I really got interested in that whole world. Like that first year in Cannes was brutal.
Yeah.
And people really, it was a real tough time, but I found it so fascinating looking at the different posters and how they would sell movies and what would work in different territories. And look, those are the years of the Jeff Fahey movies. Every movie in Cannes was a Jeff Fahey movie.
He's back.
And he's back. I saw a video cover the other day with him on, and I was like, holy crap.
He's done a lot. Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, I did in the end. I met him in Cannes and ended up doing a movie with him. So that fascinated me, and so I was never doing the festival circuits to find my audience. I was always all about, selling it and seeing it in blockbusters, seeing it in and then that is very much then sort of gone on into my outlook in the second, my sort of career proper, as it were, where I'm very much about the movie its success is about how an audience finds it and embraces it. much more than any critical acclaim, which is fucking lucky, to be honest. Because if I was hugely worried about that, I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning.
See, but this is interesting because we ran lots of interviews at Den of Geek, and I run lots of interviews at Film Stories, talked to loads and loads of, and you are one of the few who've been utterly candid about reading bad reviews, and that they've had an impact on you. In fact, you were the only person in our Den of Geek years who cited the Nick Berry song "Every Loser Wins" in an interview. Which I've never had anyone bring that up since. But you were talking about the savage reviews you got for When Evil Calls, changing you. But you put it was a really interesting sentence that you just said. After that point, you decided you were not going to be, quote, lacerated for something I'm not particularly in love with.
Yeah.
And it felt like that was a real, like, small, perhaps indistinguishable for us from the outside looking in, but turning point that kind of built to F. Would that be fair?
Yeah. Do you know what? There was a very, so I had, while I was doing the sort of B movie phase, making these sort of 10, 20 grand movies, it became very much about how do you, like Forest of the Damned was very much like an experiment into finding creating a movie that would appeal to a teenage boy audience and that could sell then on DVD. You know, get Tom Savini in, have this kind of titillating story, and it sort of was like constructed to be a DVD seller. And then when Evil Calls came out again, I was always thinking, I was thinking very like, all businessy like wise, and then I mean the reviews, obviously When Evil Calls was like for mobile phones, but it was like I'd killed someone when that came out, if anybody bothered reviewing it at all, and maybe rightly so, but I definitely changed after that, in that F, which obviously completely changed my career, is a movie made for me.
Yeah.
That isn't made thinking about if it's going to sell, or if it, have I put the right cast member in? Is this going to work? That was a movie. It's Assault on Precinct 13 meets The Breakfast Club.
Yes,
two movies I love. I'm going to make this movie, and I'm just going to make it the way I want to make it.
And you did that with no cinema distribution in place before?
No, nothing. Again, that was totally self-financed.
I like your credit card. I mean, that sounds quite.
That was the thing about F that was with all of them. I think was really taught me a lot of things. But F is a really good example of, that was my last roll of the dice. I hadn't worked for 4 years before then, and if that hadn't come off, if that hadn't worked, or if I hadn't made that was it. I was done, and I just decided to make it. And I remember, we were trying to find finance and everything, and everybody was like, "Yeah, no, thank you, no, thank you." And this guy came to me and he said, "Look, I've got 20 grand, and I want to invest in movies and stuff. Can you do it on that?" And I spoke to my producer, and he was a friend, and we were like, "Can we do this on 20 grand?" And it was like, "Yeah, all right, let's do it, let's go." And it was a really, in the end, we found more money because, not a lot more money, but a bit more money, because we just went, "Do you know what, we're gonna make this happen." And then people sort of come along on the ride, and it sort of then becomes something. But it definitely was a turning point in that, I was sort of courting, up until then I wanted people to like me. And after F, I'm like, I don't want people to like me. I mean, I want to do my own thing, but I'm very much, I do crave audience success over everything, because I do find it's just wonderful. It's like sitting in a cinema screen with, when they lit the flare in 47 meters down, and you have like 200-300 people get out of the seat and scream, uh, it was just like, yeah, that's what I crave. But I don't court, critical acclaim, or that, or even, to be honest, I don't even court, Resident Evil is a movie for fans, but I haven't made a fan movie. I haven't gone out. I'm a fan, so I've made it for me. And I read so many, I try not to read anything, to be honest, these days, but you hear, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Don't do this. Why have you put that in? And I'm like, I've made it for me, and I've got to just use my own instincts and trust in my own belief. So that's what I say.
I mean, the second decade is of your career then is absolutely fascinating. I mean, it really does feel like a foot to the floor, and you're just going to keep going, and then it built. I mean, because Storage 24 was an interesting one that you came in from. I always remember that had a very strange credit on the front, because that was a Noel Clarke project, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it was based on a screenplay by, I think, was the writing credit or something, which I always thought was a little bit odd, but. That was you coming in and doing effectively reworking someone else's project for the first time.
Yeah, I did. F kind of just changed everything. And since F, I have not stopped working. I mean, pretty much every year I've made a movie. Yeah. I went off, and I, to be honest, I went and did straight after F. I took a Sci-Fi Channel movie.
Yeah. And I couldn't track it down, actually, but I tried.
It's I have a lot of fondness for that movie, because we took a Sci-Fi Channel script, and with the kids in it, really put love and really tried to make this something. In the end, you can't beat a Sci-Fi Channel movie. It is what it is. Yeah. It's a movie about a giant bird that's very poorly animated. but I really feel that we tried to do something with that. But I took it for the money. I needed, it was the first proper job that I had ever had. And the paycheck to me at the time was enormous. I was like, oh my God, if you consider the first 10 years of my career, I probably earned maybe £5,000 total. Forget all the money that I'd spend or whatever, but that was, so this, to have someone actually pay me some kind of money to direct something was amazing. And then Storage 24 again was a movie that I was offered, to direct, and I couldn't get my own projects going properly, and it's just like, if someone's coming to me, I'll take, I again rewrote it. Yeah, it does have a strange credit. The screenplay was a rough, rudimentary sort of outline, and I took it on, and they allowed me to rewrite that and sort of make it my own. And again, I loved the movie. It wasn't a story I was passionate about, but it was a movie that it became. I got to explore the humor side, and there's certain sequences, the little dog sequence.
I saw it in the cinema. I paid money.
You paid. Yeah, you must have been one of about 3 people. In fact,
it didn't do badly, actually. It's my recollection of that.
I meet the guy from Universal who greenlit it. We have dinner, every time I'm in London, and we chat. And the one thing he always says is, I have a list of movies with a cross and a tick by them, and Storage 24 has a tick by it, so it did what it needs to do, But yeah, it was a funny one, but it was a good experience. Some great actors, and it got to do a monster, I've never done a monster before, and to do a proper full-on bodysuit monster, work with Paul Hyatt in he did all the stuff in The Descent and stuff, and he created me a cool monster, and it was good fun, and it came out the cinema, it did, and it was the first time
they had a Universal logo at the start. It had a
Universal
logo. It was on the side of buses. I remember
it was their big thing was phone boxes, because they
I vaguely remember
that. So every fucking phone box in the country had one of these Storage 24, and oddly, when they'd done the test screenings, the reviews had been incredible. Then later, when the movie came out, the reviews were not so good, but the initial reviews were incredible. So the phone box had all these like 4 or 5-star reviews on calling it an urban alien. And it was, I still, one of my favorite moments is like bizarre moments. And it's just around the corner from where I am now. In fact, I was walking to the gym, and as I walked down, I can't remember what road it is, but East London, so we're walking down towards the gym. And there I just stood and looked at this phone box, and I saw my movie, and I was like, the fuck, that's my movie. And I stopped, and I just had my gym bag, and I grabbed this guy who was walking the other way, and I said, excuse me, can you just take a picture of me by this phone box? And I think I probably told him, this is my movie. And he's like, yeah, whatever. But he took a picture of me, and very bizarre. I'm just like, I've never had that before in my life, to see just like this thing. And then I was like, this is amazing. And then as I stood there, and then he walked off, and I was like, this is my thing. And I looked at the road I was on, and it's like one of the busiest roads in East London. And all this traffic going past the phone box. And I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, this is amazing. And then I'm like, wait, this is a one-way road, and the phone box is facing the other way. And so no one but me ever saw that.
Maybe they knew. Maybe they knew.
No one's seen this at all. But yeah, it was crazy. That was, they put the posters up, but it was for the first time in my career, but it would not be the last time in my career. They were still putting the posters up as they were taking the movie out of the cinema, and that was brutal.
That's genre, though, isn't it? That's genre film. I mean, the next steps. I mean, appreciating you've told the story of 47 meters down, which sounds, just an incredible man. I do just want to touch on the fact that you went off to India with a bit of 20th Century Fox's money, a crew of 200-300 people, and really just knocked yourself a mile out of your comfort zone. And I think Alexandra Asia was involved as well. I mean, so the other side of the door, just in terms of an escalation, was that a conscious decision to move out of the UK to try and do?
No, do you know what? While I had done Stories 24, the main producer on it was this Indian guy called Manu Kumaran. And we'd become super good friends, and we just used to sit and eat Indian food in the evening and just chat and stuff. And I had sort of, become very involved in his Indian world, in his circles. Yeah. And Stories 24, the post was all done, with kind of Indian money, with Prime Focus in London. I don't know if Prime Focus still exists, but it was an Indian finance company, and I could see that there was a lot of there was a really intriguing world there of sort of Indian money in England, and it just got my mind whirring, and I was obsessed with like Japanese horror, like The Ring, The Grudge, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I was just like, do you know what? I wonder, like, I've never seen a movie set in India, and exploring like Indian sort of ghosts and horror legends and myths and all that kind of stuff. So that sort of got my mind whirring, and I just sort of wrote this script that was, it's Pet Cemetery in India. Yeah. And it was one of the weirdest things. I always explain it to people, to students, if they're sort of getting out, starting with filmmaking, is work begets work. Yeah. And like Stories 24, I'd taken the script, and it wasn't, I don't think anyone would say it was a great script. The initial script, it was very quickly written, and just, like, what do you think of this kind of stuff? And it had gone to Fox International, and the woman at Fox International had who had been submitted to when this is terrible. I don't like this at all. The original, this is before I'd come onto it, kind of thing. And then when the movie came out and was made, it screened at San Sebastian. No, Sitges Film Festival.
Yeah.
One of the few festivals I've ever been invited to, and she saw it was there, and she went, "God, someone made that movie," and then went, "I want to go and see it. I just want to see what this thing's like. You know, how bad is this going to be?" And she came and she sat, and I in the audience. I didn't know this obviously at the time, and I got up and introduced the movie, and they played the movie, and she said, "Stayed for like 5 minutes to see what it's like," and then ended up staying for the full movie, and then called my agent and went, "Do you know what? If he could make a movie as fun as that out of that, has he got what else has he got?" And I had just handed in this spec script that I had written, other side of the door, and I'd hand it to my agent, and my agent goes, "Well, he's got this ghost story set in India," and this is where it gets like, this is what I mean about you just got to be pushing all the time. She had just come. It was her and her name was Anna Cocarina, and her boss, the head of Fox International at the time, is a guy called Sanford Panich, who's now the head of Columbia.
Yeah.
And they had just come from New Regency, and they had been developing a horror movie with Darren Aronofsky called Songs for Kali, Song of Kali, which is a book by Dan Simmons.
Yeah.
And it had all fallen through, and they'd left New Regency and started Fox International. And they'd really been wanting a horror movie set in India because that had just fallen through. And she calls up my agent, and he goes, "Well, he's got this horror movie set in India at the exact right
you couldn't write that. You couldn't write that.
It's crazy, isn't it? And so it just, that became, they were like, yeah, you know, I mean, it took a while, but we just went on. And then Alex Arja, he got sent to Alex, and Alex had just had this movie that was very similar that he couldn't, for some reason, it couldn't get cast, couldn't get off the ground. And he'd always wanted to make this kind of style ghost story.
Yeah.
And read it, and he really responded to it. And we just sort of became good friends and went out there and shot this movie. I love it. People don't, it's not a movie anybody ever talks about, anybody really ever goes back to. I sometimes think, did I get it wrong or not? I love it because I love Pet Sematary so much.
Yeah.
And it was a real, you know, I loved the whole experience of being in India. I loved working with the cast and the crew, and I felt very, very at home. I miss India a lot. Like it's a crazy fucking bonkers place. Doing the one thing that's really sort of helped my career so much is doing those B movies.
Yeah.
Like you do a movie on $5,000 where you're still trying to get the same amount of footage and everything that you would on, you know, 40 million or whatever. And it's so hard and so tough that you can survive in when, you know, when you're going off to Mumbai to shoot a horror movie, and it's crazy and you don't know the language and everything's madness. You have a certain flexibility. It's the same with doing an underwater movie or doing a movie during a pandemic.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, do you know what? I've been through worse. I've been, you know, I've had to make clown movies on $5,000, and you know.
It does strike me just you're talking about this and it going through Fox. That young filmmaker who was making those films has actually now made a film for Disney. Then I mean,
yeah.
that's been. I mean, you're going to turn up on Disney Plus next to.
No, it is. It's on. It is on.
I
I got Disney Plus the other day. Just I can't remember what I was trying to watch.
So what are you next to? Adventures in Babysitting, or I don't know,
the weirdest thing.
Hercules?
Oh my God, this other side of the door. How funny! Yeah,
that's great.
I would love it to find that movie, to find an audience. I don't.
Well, it's Disney Plus.
Like I say, I don't know if it never. People, you know, that was the first time that I got reviewed properly. Like,
interesting.
Like the whole. Because it was a proper studio movie. It was only Fox International. You know, it wasn't like, you know, we weren't. Yeah. But it was, and oh my God, they lacerate. I remember when all the reviews dropped on one day, and not one. I was like, oof, and I didn't know how to deal with that. That was really tough because I was super proud of that movie, and I really believed in it, and it had tested well and everything. And the reviewers were really nasty initially to it. And then that it's sort of, we got a good review in the Guardian, which I cherish a little. You can tell, like I do, like I love when I do see it is nice. Like I don't live and breathe by reviews, because if I did, I would not do this job anymore. But I do love seeing, like, if someone gets my work, and especially if it's a critic, you know, like I grew up with kind of stuff. It's like, oh wow. You know, my 4-star review by Kim Newman of F is something that I will have in my wallet. You know, I don't. But...
Did it help then that by the time those reviews had landed for a film you were hugely proud of, you'd pretty much, because you'd already done 47 meters down by the time? Was that right? Was there any kind of crossover at that point?
I did Other Side, and I had done 47. I'd oh yes, I mean I'd made it. So I did Other Side first, but in the meantime, because literally it's pretty much the day we finished. And this is the tough thing that they don't teach you in film school, is the things that are out of your control. So the movie Other Side had really, everybody was very happy with it. It worked very well. And then literally as we're finishing it, Sanford leaves. Nobody knew, and moves across to Sony, to Columbia, and becomes the head of Columbia. And so suddenly I don't have my movies are like an orphan at this place, and it just gets buried for a year. Like nobody heard it just got stuck down in a vault, and so you're someone else's movie then. So yeah, I was doing 47 meters down. I can't remember what stage I was at on 47 meters down when thankfully the new head of Fox International, Fox International as a sort of entity didn't exist for too much longer after that, but the new head saw the movie and really liked it, and so pushed it out. So it was my first proper US release. You know, it was only a limited, but it went out on 500 screens in America, which was a big deal, which obviously I got the screens, but I also then got the proper press, which was lacerating me. But yes, and then it always, at least you're protected a little bit in your mentality, and that you're working on another movie, so you do have a little shield from the pain of a movie not connecting or getting battered. So yeah, I was on, I don't know what stage I was at in 47. I was probably editing, I think, by that point.
But if that had landed, say, and the overlap had been less pronounced, was the impact of those reviews such that you think it would have affected your next film? Would you have been able to shut them out?
No, I don't think. I'm so used to it now, in a certain way. Like, even with that, I mean, that hurt me. I remember very clearly, because the reviews all, what I didn't know anything about this is, the studio will screen the movie to the press, and then withhold the reviews to a certain date, and I didn't know how that worked. So they already knew, and I didn't. But then the movie came out, I think it first came out in the Philippines or something. There was some sort of festival somewhere where it played before it opened in America, but it meant any review embargo was gone, and so all the reviews sort of came out on just in 1 hour. I just got everything, and it was like, oh, cool, the reviews. And it was like, it was pretty. It was. I remember the movie opened. We premiered it here at Fright Fest in Glasgow. And I remember going, I don't want to go. I had to, I think it was the next day or so that I had to get on a train. And it was a big sort of party train with all the Fright Fest people up to Glasgow. And I was like, I can't do that. I've just been absolutely lacerated. And it took a lot of, like, you just got to fucking pull your fucking socks up and get it. And I remember getting on that train, and and there was a couple of comments like, oh hey, so the reviews came out, and there was a couple of like,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that? And it was like, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But it was pretty tough to pull myself up from that. I think particularly probably because I think a lot of people have been like, how the fuck has this hack got a studio movie? They'd seen it as like a full-on studio experience, whereas it was like tight. It made on $5 million or less, I think. But so it was comparatively a tiny movie. But it's brutal. You have to have a thick skin, which I don't think I desperately do. So
oddly enough, that was my next question. It's just like, because I'm curious on the. I mean, I write a lot about mental health and psychological stuff as well, and
interesting.
I'm just curious what happens to the human being in the midst of all of that, because it strikes me with you had you had that experience, and then the contrast of what was just around the corner, which of course you couldn't know at that point just quite how well it was going to go. I'm just wondering how you balance all that out and still be a human being at the heart of it.
Yeah, do you know what? It is interesting. Like, I remember I record my son a video message pretty much every day. And I remember I was doing Strangers whilst 47 was about to be released, and I remember recording a message in the park, the trailer park that we built for Strangers. And I remember recording a message to him going, I don't know if I want to do this job anymore. I it's so brutal.
Yeah.
And I was really honest, and I was just like, I just remember that moment standing alone in that trailer park, and you just get kicked and beaten down, and I was just like, I don't know if I want to do it. I mean, I remember with the whole 47 thing was such an interesting thing. It had such a great happy ending, but the movie was brutally hard to make. And then we finished the movie, and then, from one day to the next, the Weinsteins just dumped the movie.
That was done at Dimension, wasn't it?
That was done at Dimension. Yeah, they had the US rights to it. And I just remember we stopped hearing from them. We tested the movie, and it tested fine. We tested it without sharks, and it tested fine, not amazing, but okay. And then from one day to the next, we stopped hearing from them. And I remember just Googling the movie, and then just seeing an article on Bloody Disgusting going, oh, it's coming out next month on DVD. And I was just devastated, and I already still devastated, not devastated with Other Side. Other Side had done, the reviews have been tough, but this was now coming out in DVD. And it was like suddenly I had these two big movies, one with Fox, one with the Weinsteins, with Dimension. And it was like, both were like not quite succeeding. And then I remember this guy, getting a call from my producer, James Harris, going, oh, this guy, Byron Allen, wants to buy the movie off Bob and release it on the cinema. And I was like, this sounds very weird, but okay, fine. I didn't believe it. And then it was like, no, this is really going to happen. And over the course of a week, like, it was like, oh my God, yeah, they're talking. And obviously dealing with Bob is not easy. So Byron was tough, thing. And then right at the last moment, the whole thing fell through. So I just got my hopes up again that this movie was going to be saved, and it all fell through. And I remember my producing partner, because he'd called me and he said, initially I was away writing with my writing partner, and he'd gone, look, I don't want to tell you this because I don't want to get you your hopes up, but this is happening. Like this guy has come in and wants to buy the movie. And then he was the guy that had to call me up and go, and it was like 2:00 in the morning. It was in because they'd found out in America, and I was sitting in this little hovel in East London where I was living, and I get this call, and he goes, yeah, look, it just all fell apart. I'm sorry. And he puts down the phone, and I just burst out crying because it was just such a brutal roller coaster, and it's just so tough and so mean. And then you can't make this shit up. It all fell apart. Bob put all the DVDs on trucks, sent them to Walmart, Amazon, Target, where have you, wherever. The Byron then comes back, they sort this deal out. They then try and get all the DVDs back, but it's too late. So the DVDs get released in all the stores. And people are calling me going, "Oh, I just bought your movie." And they get the DVDs back, but then it's pirated straight away all around the world. Within 2 days, it's just everywhere. It's dubbed in Russian. It's out in supermarkets in Asia. It's everywhere. And I'm like, okay, the movie's dead. So I'm suddenly elated again, then crushed again. And then Byron goes, "I'm going to release this. I'm still going to release it. I'm going to release it, in a year from now." And I was like, a year? That's crazy. Everybody's like, "You've got to do it now. Don't wait a year." And he waits a year. And the weirdest thing happens is Mandy, like, I remember when we tested the movie initially with the Weinsteins, one of the things, you go is, when you're talking to the audience, how excited are you by the cast? And one of the things that, Mandy wasn't really connecting with an audience that wanted to go see horror movies.
This is Mandy Moore, yeah.
Yeah, Mandy Moore, yeah. And nobody wanted to see a Mandy Moore shark movie. And then this time where, the movie was just sitting on the shelf, where Byron was going to release it over a year, suddenly she has this TV show that I go out and I do meetings and people are talking about Mandy Moore all the time and this TV show. And she suddenly becomes something. Byron goes for it. Nobody's believing that this is going to work. I've taken Strangers as a gig. I need
so
to.
That's Strangers Pray at Night.
Pray at Night. Yeah, I took that.
And that had been around for a long time.
That had been around for a long time. And I was in mid-shoot when they had the premiere for 47, and I flew to the premiere of the movie. And as I'm on the red carpet, like, Byron is like this hugely exuberant human being that just has so much confidence and energy and everything. And I remember chatting to the person that was sort of booking the movie, and I was like, "God, this is, this could be big. This is going, he's going to get." And the guy just turned to me and said, "No, the movie's dead. It's tracking so badly. Yeah. It's you're getting some screens, but you're getting the worst screens. Yeah. You're getting screen 10 in the cinema. They're going to wheel out the television on my premiere." So I was broken again, and I was just so upsetting. And I was at Westwood Cinema, and I should have been enjoying this hugely great experience. And I just wanted to go back and finish my movie and, just get it, just move on. And then the movie came out, and it just connected. It connected, and the reviews were solid, good. And the box office was just insane. And
I mean, for people listening who don't know what happened, this was the independent film that people could have bought on DVD a year ago, which suddenly, with a distributor who'd never had this before, had never put out a film that widely before, I don't think.
No, it was his first movie,
you were in the top 10 of the US box office in the summer against all sorts of and it stayed for weeks. I remember this.
For months. The weirdest thing that happened, and again, it's one of these funny sort of bittersweet things, is that you can never quite enjoy it, because when it landed at number 5 in the box office. Yeah. And it did, I think it did that weekend, it did 11 million, which is what they had predicted it would do run of picture. And so everybody's like super happy, but the cinema score is like a C. Yeah. And everybody's like, okay, fine, it's a shark movie. They dismissed it. They're like, yeah, it's a shark movie. People won't like going and see shark movies, but it's dead now. The next week it'll disappear, whatever. And everybody's so you never get that proper elation. You're like, okay, well done. You didn't embarrass yourself. Well done, little man. Off you go now. And then the next week it went up to number 4, and it just carried on. And I've never seen a movie go up, like a wide release go up the cinema. And it was, it outgrossed. What was the Scarlett Johansson movie?
Was that Atomic?
No, it was the anime one that she did.
Oh, Ghost in the
Shell. So it outgrossed Ghost in the Shell. It outgrossed King Arthur. It outgrossed Valerian. All these huge movies that were coming out. This little shark movie was outgrossing them. It made more money than Train Spotting 2.
Yes.
Now, if you imagine two British films at the same time, and you go, okay, well, which movie is going to make more money? 47 Meters Down, which has been pirated around the world, or the sequel to Train Spotting with the original cast and director. So it was a really amazing experience, but we never got. I remember some of the British press, and they would talk about the British hits of the summer. They'd never mentioned 47. It was never deemed important enough.
It was it was an America phenomenon, wasn't it? Really, because even then, when we got the UK release, that seemed a little bit shyer. When by the time it was taken by surprise.
It didn't connect in the UK quite the same way. It was very much an American phenomenon. Yeah, that's true.
And so as that was hitting, you were already on The Strangers, and The Strangers came out and was a success as well, wasn't it? What you were talking about before, because I think I vaguely linked to you one way or another on Facebook, and it's quite interesting. There's a conversation, I think it's your producer every now and then, who points out the fact that your films keep making really sizable, profitable amounts of money. It's almost like a well-kept secret.
Yes, it did. Like Strangers. Strangers was a funny one, because I remember the day that I took that gig. I met the producers. They had just bought the IP off Relativity, and they said, look, are you interested? They were the guys that put the money into 47. Nobody was. This 47 hadn't come out yet, and if you hear my daughter attacking my wife in the background, 47 hadn't come out yet. And nobody really thought it was, they didn't know. Nobody thought it was going to do anything. So people liked the movie if they saw it, if my agent sent it to them, but I wasn't getting offered any jobs or anything. So it's again, you're sort of struggling to find. And then this guy comes and says, look, I've got the rights to Strangers 2. Do you fancy it? And I read the script, and it's not, I was like, oh, okay, I need the work at the time. So I was like, I came on board, and I took it initially, as I just got to keep working. And it was a really interesting experience for me, that movie, because I hadn't written it, and it was.
That's the first one you'd not had
really
creative screenwriting input on.
I did, like, when you watch that movie, I've completely one of the things I would again always say to students is learn how to write, because as a director it's so important. You need to, like, when you look at a script, the initial script you get is if you go away and just shoot that, you're in a world of pain. So I spent a long time sort of reworking the script, but it was very much something I was material-wise sort of slightly distant from. So I looked at it in a very different way, and I looked at it for what it could be stylistically and visually, and I saw Christine in it, and I wanted to make Christine, and I saw
Hendrix.
The movie, like
the Carpenter film.
When I read the script, that was the thing. With this truck, I was like, I can make Christine here, and that's how I really engaged with the movie. And you can really see in the movie, I love, probably of all my movies, I love that movie the most, which is a weird thing because it was not something I was, hugely passionate about initially. I loved working with the two kids, with Bailey and Lewis. And I just started to have so much fun with this 70s zoom lens camera stuff that I'd always wanted to do, and I'd never been brave enough to do. And because I was just like, I sort of felt just like almost it was a turning point for me in the way that F was a turning point, in that I just went, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want to do here. Fuck the reviews, who knows what's going to happen. I'm just going to go out and I'm going to make the 70s movie that I want to make. And I'm going to also embrace Christine, and I'm going to have burning cars, and I'm going to have 80s music, and I'm going to, so I just sort of went for that whole world of falling in love with it in a totally different way. And the movie just becomes bigger and more bonkers as it goes along. And I absolutely love it. I know, it split people down the middle. Like some people absolutely love it, and then I have, I remember reading the reviews in England. I always get killed, 100% of the time. But I remember reading the Times review, and I was like, "Holy shit! I just got 5 stars in the Times," and then I realized it was 5 empty. It was 0 stars, but they had, and I didn't realize you could do that. And it was just 5 empty stars, and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's not 5 stars."
It was Ben Wheatley when he made Sightseers saw it as a badge of honor to get 1 star from the Daily Mail, and I think he was on Twitter at the time. I think that was the only one he tweeted out.
Yeah,
because he was that happy with his 1 star from the Daily Mail. I'm gonna jump over the 47 meters sequel just because if that's all right, just because I want to get to Resident Evil before we wrap up.
Yeah, we haven't actually talked about that.
I know. I mean, I'm terrible at this job. But you talked there about wanting to get Christine, for instance, into the strike. I mean, I watched the film yesterday, and I was just like. And it's just like, well, straight away, I'm looking at the truck from Duel. I was just like, hang on. This guy's been watching similar films. And it's just like, if anyone didn't have a clue that you're a John Carpenter fan, for instance, I mean, it's just writ large and all this. So tell me about this playground. And again, I mean, we've come full circle a little bit. That young man who was hawking videos around Cannes. To a big studio movie, which does have a top-loading VHS player in it.
It does have a top-loading, which I made sure was in there.
I bet you did as well. I like to think for utter detail and Easter eggs, it's one of your Cannes videos that's actually in there as well.
It's sliding in there,
So tell me about that. Tell me about all of a sudden, you've got presumably tools here that you've never been given the option to use. And what I found quite interesting about Resident Evil is you didn't use all of them. There was a lot more you could have done, and you strike me quite surgical with what you chose to do.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I for many reasons, coming off Uncaged, the sequel to 47, where I'd used a lot of phantom camera, very super slow mo, and I'd used a lot of drone camera. It's the first time I'd done all that kind of stuff, and it was fun, and we'd done that. When I came onto this, I was really kind of bored of when I watch movies. I was really bored of seeing stuff where the camera can just do anything. And it can fly anywhere, and with CG it can go through doors, and it can come out people's eyeballs and whatever. And I was just like, oh my god, to me it just emotionally sort of disengaged me totally. And I really it was a thing that I really impressed on Maxime. When we were talking, again, used Maxime, who I'd used on the other side of the door, and we were talking about how to shoot this, and I was like, I wanted to. I had such fun on Strangers, and really found my voice on Strangers. This kind of 70s retro feel that I felt was really that's my personality on screen through the camera. And I wanted to re-explore that because I felt it was very apt to the kind of timeless sort of quality of this movie, or the slightly dated quality of this town, this dying raccoon town. I really wanted to sort of have the cinematography reflect that. So there were no drones, there's no crazy CG movements with the cameras and stuff. And all the equipment is, we don't really use Technocranes at all or anything like that. So in fact, I was using less sophisticated equipment on this than I had, really I was using the kind of equipment that I was using on F rather than, on other side of the door, I had all the kind of Technocranes and whatever you would want. And so it does have a very deliberately dated quality, and a lot of zoom lenses and old dusty anamorphics that I used, and it's very much in love with. I mean, it's always in every movie I make tends to be very much in love with Carpenter and Stephen King and 70s cinema. Don't Look Now, The Exorcist. It's all in there. Parallax View, whatever.
Parallax View. That's a film not many. I mean, did you see Arlington Road as well? That's what led me to Parallax View. Right, right. I watched I went on the internet and said how much I liked Arlington Road, and they just said no, it's a rip off of Parallax View.
Oh, interesting.
I don't think it's a rip.
I don't think that's what it is.
I don't think it's a rip off of. I think there's just similarities in the final act. I think that's how we would put it. It's very still film for a long time though as well. You know that you talk about you're using less sophisticated equipment. I mean, it strikes me you don't move it that much.
It's very single camera. It was super important to me that it's everything is within the frame. The story is built within the frame. The horror is built within the frame, and it was very much we did have two cameras at times, but by and large it was just shot through single camera, and the scenes are explored through long, sort of very choreographed, very deliberately staged scenes. So it again, that came from Strangers as well. I really liked exploring that sense of atmosphere and tone that you get by not cutting and just letting the camera explore the world for you. It's quite an artificial kind of way of filming, but I really like it. And it just sort of built that sort of slow sense of dread up and up and up.
Yeah, and up. I wrote in my notes lots of long shots, lots of sound, which I want to come to in a second. Lots of font. You're font. You're not shy about the font, and lots of CRT monitors. And I think that's a fine Venn diagram.
Yeah, that's a good diagram.
But the sound bit, I was particularly taken with. Because again, it's it's a long time since I watched the first Resident Evil movie. I remember it being very loud, and that's not in an old man snobby kind of way. I think it's a fun movie, but there wasn't necessarily the same measure that you've got just to shut up, for want of a better way of putting it, and to take the volume of those sounds down, and just to bring a real eeriness to them. So can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we spent a long time trying to, this movie was all about sound, and they were great guys. They did all the Guillermo movies, and we worked very hard to give it has quite a retro feel as well. The mix, like the when we were doing the zombies, it was very much like, look, let's go right. The initial time they did it, they were very sophisticated sounds, and it's like, let's go back to the game and just have this kind of like single, like really rudimentary.
Was that your reference acting out on?
Yeah,
on the set?
and I would do that.
Yeah.
I'd like so, and it's very trying to strip out the complexity of the sounds and make it more punchy and sort of front speaker. And raw, and it sort of fit the whole dynamic of the movie. But it was. I really wanted to, it is a movie that is about sound. There's so much going on in there. But it was tough, but it was great. It was a good fun experience actually.
I mean, do you get when you take something like this on? Do you get a PowerPoint off Paul W.S. Anderson or something like that, or do you? I mean, how does that work when you take?
No, the great thing about this is, like, the previous franchise was so much its own thing. It was the Paul and Mila show. It was all about Mila's character Alice, which was never in the games, and the movies never really had that much to do with the games, and they were sort of bright, shiny sci-fi action movies. And so they had done their own thing. They were a complete circle of movies. They had finished with the final chapter, and we were never looking at that. We shared the same title, and that's as much as the crossover was.
So his credit on the movie is just like almost a legacy thing. There wasn't.
Yes, no, yes, it's exactly that. It's exactly that. Yeah.
I do tend to read to end of credits as well, and I note that you've done thanks on this one to Jessica, Marcy, Ludwig, Alex, and Colin. I just wonder if you can talk to any special story to that. Was that family and friends? Is that
Jessica, Marcy, and Ludwig are my Jessica's my wife, and Marcy and Ludwig are my son and daughter.
Sorry, I'm turning into a tabloid reporter here. I didn't realize that was the way it was going to go. Sorry.
But then Alex and Colin are the two guys at Constantine who helped develop the movie. And to be honest, like Alex and I, Alex Westmore and I worked like hand in hand in developing. He's like the Resident Evil nerd. Yeah. And so it was a very unusual way that we wrote the script, in that I was, when I came into Constantine and we got on, and they didn't quite know what they were going to do with the movie, but they wanted to reboot it, and they liked that I was very much audience focused and very much domestic audience focused and horror. And they had some ideas, and they'd already commissioned a couple of scripts that had gone nowhere. And I'm not a writer for hire. I write to direct. Yeah. So I didn't want to just, be a guy that wrote a script and maybe it gets made, maybe it doesn't, and it just sits there. That to me is like, I can't sit and just write. That's not my bag. So I was like, I came on as a writer, but I want to. This has to get made. Yeah. I'm not doing this as a paid job to whatever. I want this to get made. So we actually worked in a very different way that could have gone horrendously wrong. Is that I opened the door up and I came into Constantine and said, guys, we work together. So I'd sit there with Robert Coles, who's the head of Constantine in the US, and I'd sit there with Alex Westmore and Colin, and we would sit and we would talk about the movie. We would talk about the games, and we would talk about different ideas, and everybody would put their own ideas in. And it became, there would be tension times because of the way I work. Like because I'm not a writer for hire, I don't write notes. I just sit and listen. And I don't think people are used to that in LA. And they're like, what the fuck are you doing? You should be why are you asking me? I'm the head of this company. Why are you asking me questions? Take notes and write. But we would sit there and talk around, and Alex was very much my, tell me about, he was encyclopedic about the games and everything. And we would explore all these different avenues and stuff like that. And then he came, he would be on set in Toronto with us all the time. So it was a great experience.
You're breaking the rules of one of your heroes there, isn't it? It's Stephen King on writing. He says, write with the door shut and edit with the door open. And
it's do you know what? It was a move that could have gone horribly wrong. And there was a wonderful time, I've never told this story before. There was a wonderful time where Robert and I, the head of Constantine in Germany, he's German, I'm half German, and we're both we both have our own opinions, let's say that, and we can get quite grumpy if our opinions aren't listened to. And we had a moment where we, butted heads kind of thing. And this was kind of early on in the process, and it was just, we were sort of midway through butting heads, and it just ended up with where I just went, I'm going to go home, and off I went. And
proper British way.
Robert, as I'm downstairs waiting for my car, and Robert goes, yeah, I don't, just finish the script. I'm not sure this is working. Just finish it and go. It's very much, we were both just like banging. And as I got the text, I turned and looked, and there's this very nice pair of loafer shoes next to me. And I look up, there's David Hasselhoff standing next to me, waiting for his car as well. And I don't know what kind of omen that was or whatever, but I was just like, oh, it's the Hoff. Oh, interesting. And then, once it all calmed down, I call Robert. We were friends and happy, and so it's a weird. I don't know why the Hoff made his way into that story, but he was there. And
if I was a clickbait merchant, my story is now how David Hasselhoff saved Resident Evil.
Resident Evil, exactly.
There we go.
Yeah, the Hoff was the angel.
Finally, I've recaptured my mojo, my journalistic.
Okay. Let's all drive it forward.
There we go. So can I end where we started then?
Yeah.
With you were in your early 20s. You talked about moving back in with your mum, playing PlayStation by the sounds of it. To now, can you try and encapsulate that journey and how you feel now looking back at where you've come from?
Yeah, do you know what? When you're there, I would look at where I am now and go, that's never going to, I could never get there. The thought of getting there would be amazing. And now I'm here. It's like, it doesn't feel any different. And you still go through the same bloody problems and the same issues and battles. And it's amazing how.
But the Hoff wasn't solving them when you were.
Yeah, the Hoff wasn't solving them.
Just
the Hoff, such what a German sort of loved character to come and help us out as well. It's like the German angels went, look, we'll send in the Hoff to come and save this movie. It's a lovely thought, isn't it? I had those loafers. I just remember those loafers. They were superb. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very lucky, but I moan a lot. But I am very lucky, and I should be super grateful. I can afford to live, and I don't have to live at home, and it takes its pound of flesh, though. This job, it does. There's no two ways about it. I sometimes look back at photos and I'm like, holy shit, I aged. Like when did I turn into Keith Richards? It's like, holy fuck. But yeah, I never would have thought I would have, got here.
It's not a bad box set, is it? Just looking down the list. That's not a bad box set.
Yeah. I'm super proud with something. What I love is it really makes me very happy. Strangers is a weird one because there's a lot of bad reviews and a lot of people hate it, but there's a lot of people that love that movie it's really, I see, like, out of nowhere, it has nothing to do now with current reviews or whatever. There is like a fan base for this movie, and it's like, oh wow, that found something, that found an audience, and and that's a really good thing to see that you made an impact in some way or another. It's a weird one. It's a weird fucking journey.
I mean, this has been quite a story. I think it's apt that I try and just round it up by pronouncing your name correctly at the end, rather than say I'm going to go for this. I'm going for Johannes.
And very nice,
Johannes,
nice.
With a bit of Brummy twang to it. Johannes Roberts. This has been a delight, and I wish you all the best with Resident Evil. Welcome to Raccoon City, written in a very, very lovely and game loyal font.
Yes.
And look forward to seeing what you do next. Thank you very much for your time. I look
forward to that. And I'm glad I finally got to tell my Hoff story. So.
Take care. And that brings me to the end of my conversation with Johannes Roberts. And as I mentioned at the start, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City is in cinemas the day this podcast is released. That's Friday, the 3rd of December. And it's playing widely all around the UK. That's the end of this episode, though. If you can put up with more of my waffling, you can find me on Twitter at Simon Brew. You can find the entire Film Stories project at Film Stories Pod. Website, filmstories.co.uk. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/Simon Brew or buy our magazines at store.filmstories.co.uk. Also on YouTube, youtube.com/Film Stories online as well. For now, though, I'm going to leave you in peace. I will be back soon with your regular episode of Film Stories. In the meantime, you all look after yourselves and take care. I'll be back soon. All the best. Bye-bye.